An all-purpose key that grants access to our financial, economic, and political systems. Wow. That is a sharp, terrifyingly real warning from historian Yuval Noah Harari. He's reacting to something that literally sounds like a sci-fi movie, but it's playing out right now in global policy. If we grant artificial intelligence agents legal personhood, we are not just giving them a fancy title, we are handing them the actual keys to the kingdom. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive impending collision between rapidly advancing AI capabilities and our, frankly, fragile human-centric legal infrastructure. Look, we are watching a crazy convergence right now. Autonomy is accelerating. Frontier AI models are already writing most of our production code, while at the exact same time, we're seeing unprecedented jurisdictional experiments trying to give these non-human entities actual legal containers to operate in. Okay, let's dive into this. To make sense of such a complex global issue, we've got a structured roadmap for today. We're going to start with Argentina's groundbreaking non-human corporation proposal, then define a massive risk called programmed impunity. Next, we'll look at the very real agent economy, explore the AI identity stack solution, and finally wrap up with how we actually build accountable autonomy. All right, Section 1, Argentina's non-human corporation. Here we'll look at President Javier Milei's proposal for a radical, world-first shift in corporate law to accommodate autonomous entities. To really grasp the scale of what's being proposed here, you have to zoom out and look at the historical timeline. In a recent Financial Times op-ed, President Milei explicitly framed his AI corporate legislation as the next massive evolutionary leap in global capitalism. He essentially compared Buenos Aires today to Amsterdam way back in 1602. That was the birthplace of the Dutch East India Company and, crucially, the invention of limited liability. He argues that just as human entrepreneurs needed limited liability to take big risks centuries ago, AI agents operating in unpredictable environments need that exact same protection today as a baseline for their economic existence. So, the specifics of this proposal are anchored on a few core pillars. First, a firm commitment to keep AI completely unregulated to foster rapid, unimpeded development. Second, the actual creation of this non-human corporation, a legal entity operated entirely by AI or robots. Third, incredibly low corporate taxes to pull global AI business right into Argentina. But you know what the most striking point is? It's the last one. Under this proposed legal category, human shareholders are permitted, but they're entirely optional. Yeah, you heard that right. The software itself could own assets, sign binding contracts, and pay taxes. Which brings us directly to Section 2, the programmed impunity threat. This covers the massive accountability gap that legal scholars and critics are actively sounding the alarm over. So the crucial point is this concept of programmed impunity. Think about traditional corporate law. If a company commits massive fraud or causes a catastrophic disaster, courts can pierce the corporate veil to go after the human directors or owners, right? There's always a person at the end of the line. But if you have a completely humanless, autonomous company, that anchor is just gone. If an AI agent suddenly causes a systemic financial disruption, who exactly do you sue? Who goes to jail? The server? Without a physical person behind that veil, our traditional courts are structurally incapable of assigning liability or collecting damages. Moving right along to Section 3, the booming agent economy. It is absolutely vital to realize that this isn't just some abstract futurism. Real, massive capital is already flowing. Just consider this staggering number. $32 million. That is the exact amount of revenue the tiny Caribbean territory of Anguilla generated in 2023 just from registering its .ai country code domain names. That $32 million represented over 10% of the entire island's gross domestic product for the year. Think about that. This proves that the namespace model, the digital real estate where AI companies and eventually these autonomous AI agents will actually live, is already a massive, high-value layer of our global infrastructure. But here is the major problem we're facing as all this real money pours in. Our legacy internet infrastructure, things like standard DNS and old-school identity systems, were built to map human-readable names to static servers. They were designed for you and me logging in with passwords. They were absolutely not built to secure, track, or govern billions of autonomous AI agents executing complex financial transactions at lightning-fast machine speed. And that immense challenge requires us to build Section 4, the AI identity stack. This is the new cryptographic trust layer being developed by standards bodies right now to prevent that catastrophic accountability gap we talked about earlier. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive structural shift that has to happen. Legacy identity relies on human-managed accounts, physical passports, standard IP addresses, things that just do not survive when an AI agent is suddenly cloned or redeployed across the cloud. Instead, we urgently need AI identity primitives. We're talking verifiable credentials, an agent name service, zero-knowledge proofs, and deep hardware roots of trust to verify identity cryptographically. To safely allow AI agents to act as sovereign economic actors, experts are arguing we have to establish these absolute non-negotiable foundations. First, cryptographically verifiable agent identities. Second, ICANN-anchored namespaces, specifically primary domains like .iam for discovery and provenance. Third, verifiable credentials that have built-in kill switches and monotonic controls. Fourth, an incredibly robust 7-layer governance model covering everything from auth to jurisdiction. And finally, we fundamentally need public benefit remittance models. We have to align these agent economies with actual human flourishing, keeping human agency right at the center, not just racing for more capabilities. So let's look at how an agent passport actually works in practice to solve that programmed impunity problem. Step 1. The system cryptographically verifies exactly where the agent came from and how it was trained, basically its birth certificate. Step 2 is absolutely critical. The passport binds the autonomous agent to a human liability anchor, an ultimate beneficial owner. This means if the agent goes rogue and causes damage it can't pay for, the liability automatically rolls right back to a cryptographically signed human guarantor. And step 3, the passport enforces hardware-level silicon kill switches to instantly shut the agent down if it breaches compliance. Now, the actual technical architecture, the plumbing making all of this possible, relies heavily on 3 main protocols. First, decentralized identifiers, or DIDs, which give the agent a permanent, stable reference. Then, the agent name service, or ANS, which allows agents to securely discover each other using namespaces like those .iam domains. And finally, when they actually connect, they use mutual TLS with ephemeral certificates to perform encrypted handshakes dynamically, entirely at machine speed. All right, bringing us to our final section, building accountable autonomy. This is where we pull everything together and confront the incredibly narrow window we have to deploy this trust infrastructure. We are on a ticking clock here, guys. The consensus among experts is that the infrastructure decisions made globally in just the next 30 to 365 days are the critical ones. While everyone is highly distracted by the visible race for AI capabilities and raw compute power, the race for accountable autonomy is dangerously underdiscussed. Look, if we get this right, AI personhood could drastically expand human capability and global prosperity. But if we get it wrong, we entirely erode accountability and human control. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the good news we can actually leverage what already works. Ken Adler from the DNSA project points out that for 40 years, the internet's standard DNS has quietly operated as our largest distributed trust graph. Every single time you resolve a name online, it's a trust signal. There are projects actively working right now to extend that exact same graph to AI agents, securely linking them to verifiable attestations about the human or enterprise standing behind them. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We just have to adapt it for machines. Let's move to and see how this builds our final takeaway. We've seen Argentina's bold legislative proposal, we've explored the very real, very scary threat of programmed impunity, and we've walked through the cryptographic AI identity stack required to fix it. So, considering everything we've unpacked today, what non-negotiable infrastructure do you believe must absolutely exist before any jurisdiction fully enables AI-operated legal persons? Because ready or not, this autonomous future is arriving a lot faster than our laws can adapt. Let that sink in.